The first half of the 12th century was one of the periods in which political fragmentation and regional power struggles were most intensely experienced in the Islamic world. The loss of central authority by the Great Seljuk state had caused the rise of emirates, atabaliks, and independent tribes of various scales in the regions of Syria, Iraq, and Egypt. These local powers were forming temporary alliances with each other while also frequently interfering with one another's borders. The instability in the region affected not only local administrations but also the daily lives of the people directly, constantly threatening agriculture, trade, and urban security. The capture of Jerusalem by the First Crusade in 1099 completely changed the balance of power in the region. The Crusaders had strategically established the Principality of Antioch in the north, the counties centered around Tripoli and Acre along the coast, and the Kingdom of Jerusalem in the south. This new political structure created both a threat and a strategic opportunity for the Islamic world, because the lack of cooperation and coordination among the fragmented Muslim powers strengthened the permanence of the Crusaders in the region. It was in this complex political and military environment that Saladin Ayyubi was born in Tikrit in 1137. The geography in which he was born and the conditions of the period shaped his character and leadership abilities, providing a foundation that would allow him to encounter both dangers and opportunities at a young age. Saladin Ayyubi came from a Kurdish family. However, his family had long held important military and bureaucratic positions under Seljuk administration. His father, Ayyubi ibn Shadi, and his uncle Shirkuh served the Zengids, who were respected among the powerful rulers and warriors of the time. This family background allowed Saladin to observe strategic thinking, military discipline, and state administration from a very early age. Young Saladin did not grow up in the midst of war. Although he was not directly involved in conflicts, he learned military training, administrative knowledge, and diplomatic subtlety through his family and close environment. Observing the strategic moves made by his father and uncle while fulfilling their duties formed the basis that would later enable him to combine both war and statecraft. During this early period, Saladin's character began to take shape. He had a quiet and observant personality. He prioritized moderation and balance in his decisions, avoided conflicts, and focused on strategic thinking. He was patient and calculated. Instead of sudden reactions, he preferred long-term planning. His education was not limited to military discipline. From a young age, Saladin focused on scholarly disciplines. Lessons such as jurisprudence, hadith, the Arabic language, and Kalam helped him prioritize justice, logic, and legal sensitivity in his later decisions. This intellectual foundation would be vital in the complex administrative processes and diplomatic relations in Egypt and Syria in later years. The year 1146 was one of the turning points in Saladin's life. Nur al-Din Zengi, who consolidated his rule in Mosul and Syria, changed the balance of power in the region, and the Ayyubid family entered the service of this new authority. Saladin began to take positions in the military bureaucratic cadres alongside his uncle Shirkuh. This period was the first major phase in which he tested and practiced his youthful observational skills, strategic patience, and leadership potential. Saladin began gaining experience not only on the battlefield but also in administration, logistics, and public relations. Nur al-Din Zengi's strict discipline and determined leadership defined the strategic and moral reference points that would form the basis of Saladin's future decisions. The natural course of events was preparing Saladin to face the Egypt campaigns and his regional rise in the following years. This process was also a critical phase in which his character and leadership philosophy, combining patience, justice, and strategic intelligence, took shape. By the 1160s, Egypt had entered a period of disintegration under the Fatimid state. The authority of the caliph had weakened considerably, and real power had concentrated in the hands of viziers and palace bureaucrats. Power struggles within the palace, economic crises, and public alienation from the administration were rotting Egypt from within. The Crusaders, taking advantage of this internal turmoil, were trying to infiltrate Egypt, aiming strategically to control the Nile Delta. This situation posed a great threat to Nur al-Din Zengi. If Egypt fell under Crusader control, the security of Syria would be at risk, and the united strategic defense of the Islamic world would be seriously weakened. Therefore, Nur al-Din activated the plan for an Egyptian campaign. Saladin joined this critical expedition alongside his uncle Shirkuh. The campaign offered Saladin a unique opportunity to observe and understand both the geography of Egypt and the political chaos in the region firsthand. The strategic importance of the Nile Delta, the internal structure of the cities, and the relationship between the people and the administration formed the basis of his later administrative and diplomatic skills. In the initial campaigns, Saladin did not take part directly at the front of battle. Instead, he played an active role in logistical management, city security, and securing public support. This approach formed the foundations of his future administrative and diplomatic leadership. When Shirkuh's military genius and Saladin's administrative abilities came together, public support was secured in Cairo and security was established. Saladin began understanding the psychology of the city's population, the dynamics of the palace bureaucracy, and the coordination of local military elements. This experience helped him develop a balanced perspective on both war and governance, reinforcing his leadership potential. The sudden death of Shirkuh in 1169 created a major administrative vacuum in Egypt. Although the palace elites initially underestimated young Saladin, his steadfast and courageous stance, fair and impartial attitude, trust-based relationship with the public, ability for economic reform and strategic planning, raised him to the rank of vizier. This rise brought three major outcomes: the effective end of the Fatimid state and the reshaping of central authority, the collapse of Crusader ambitions over Egypt and the shift of regional balances in favor of the Islamic world. Saladin's emergence as the central figure who would determine the fate of the Middle East. These developments naturally prepared the ground for his consolidation of authority in Syria and the foundation of the Ayyubid state. Saladin was now emerging not only as a warrior but also as a competent leader in diplomacy, economics, public administration, and strategic planning. The year 1171 was a turning point in Saladin's life. With the effective end of the Fatimid state, the responsibility of re-establishing central authority in Egypt fell entirely on Saladin's shoulders. This process was not only a military operation, it was also a diplomatic, economic, and ideological balancing act. Saladin, while ending the symbolic authority of the Fatimid Caliphate, established the authority of the Abbasid Caliph in Egypt. This step strengthened his legitimacy in the Islamic world. At the same time, it ensured the establishment of a strong central authority capable of defending Egypt against the Crusaders. During this period, Saladin's diplomatic intelligence was decisive in winning public trust and reorganizing the bureaucratic structure. He also made significant reforms in the economic field. He regulated the taxation system to ease public burden, increased agricultural production, and strengthened Cairo's commercial infrastructure. Thus, internal stability was ensured, and a foundation was created for financial and logistical preparation against the Crusaders. After solidifying his authority in Egypt, Saladin naturally turned his attention to Syria. In the mid-12th century, Syria had become fragmented following the death of Nur al-Din Zengi, and constant conflicts were taking place among local emirates. Saladin used both diplomatic and military strategies to evaluate this vacuum. He first formed alliances with local emirates. He bound some through economic and political incentives, while posing a strong military threat to others. During this period, Saladin emerged as a leader who would reshape not only Egypt but the entire regional balance of power. His strategic moves combined patience and calculation with the observational and intellectual discipline he had acquired in his youth. Saladin's goal in Syria became clear: to establish a united Islamic front against the Crusaders and to gather all Muslim powers in the region under his authority. This process was the first concrete manifestation of his long-term strategic vision. At the beginning of the 1170s, Saladin organized planned military expeditions to consolidate his rule in Egypt and Syria. In these campaigns, his role involved not only battlefield engagement but also multidimensional responsibilities such as logistical planning, organizing the army, strengthening the defenses of cities, and gaining public support. Saladin prioritized discipline and motivation in the army. He offered strategic bonuses, rewards, and logistical support to keep morale high. At the same time, thanks to his communication with the public, he ensured security and order in the cities under threat of occupation. This combination reinforced his capacity as both a military and political leader. What was remarkable in his campaigns against the Crusaders was Saladin's preference for strategically weakening the enemy rather than engaging in direct conflict. He prioritized long-term stability and regional dominance over short-term gains. This was a concrete reflection of the strategic patience and foresight he had cultivated since youth. Between 1171 to 1183, Saladin laid the foundations of the Ayyubid state not only with military victories but also by establishing an institutional structure and bureaucracy that united the various social, economic, and military elements in Egypt and Syria. In the early 1180s, the Kingdom of Jerusalem was the most stable and strategically crucial point of the Crusaders in the Middle East. King Baldwin IV, despite his physical weakness due to leprosy, was capable of making political and military decisions. The Kingdom of Jerusalem possessed a defensive line stretching from the coastal cities to Tripoli, from the Principality of Antioch to Ascalon and Gaza. However, internal political disputes and succession struggles weakened Crusader defenses. After consolidating his authority in Egypt and Syria, Saladin turned his attention to Jerusalem, the most strategic point of the Crusaders. His strategic vision focused not on short-term conquests but on permanently controlling Jerusalem and its surroundings and establishing a united Islamic front in the Middle East. The relationship between Saladin and Baldwin was not built solely on hostility. On the contrary, it was shaped through diplomatic maneuvers and mutual observation. Before launching a direct attack on the Kingdom of Jerusalem, Saladin closely studied the strategies and distribution of power among Crusader leaders to gain advantage. Baldwin IV, despite his illness, remained active in governance, dealing with both his emirates and internal succession struggles. This widened Saladin's room for maneuver both diplomatically and militarily. Saladin's strategic patience and his relationships with the populace allowed him to gain support in and around Jerusalem, while Baldwin's internal political weaknesses disrupted Crusader coordination. Baldwin IV realized the approaching threat from Saladin early. The king reorganized his army, strengthened forts, requested reinforcements, and attempted to consolidate Crusader alliances. However, Baldwin's leprosy and internal political conflicts limited his long-term strategic planning. Saladin, meanwhile, carefully monitored the situation. Avoiding sudden attacks, he analyzed the Crusaders' morale and logistical capacity, aiming to exhaust their resources through short engagements. This method was a practical reflection of the strategic patience and long-term planning ability he had developed since his youth. Saladin's strategy toward Jerusalem was not limited to military conquest. He aimed to rebuild the regional balance of power and permanently counter the Crusaders by establishing a strong central authority across the Egypt-Syria axis. During this process, relations with independent emirates in Syria were strengthened, with some brought under Saladin's authority. The bureaucracy and financial system in Egypt were structured to support long-term campaigns. Diplomatic communication with Crusaders and local powers continued to prevent potential allies from switching sides. Thus, Saladin was not merely planning a conquest, he was also establishing a permanent power center and a unified defensive front in the Middle East. By 1187, the Crusaders were at a severe strategic disadvantage due to internal conflicts and Saladin's rising power. After Baldwin IV's death, the Kingdom of Jerusalem was shaken by succession struggles, coordination between Antioch, Tripoli, and other principalities weakened. Saladin had long observed this situation carefully and developed plans to maximize his advantage. Saladin's strategic approach was not based solely on direct military victory, he primarily focused on cutting the enemy's logistical lines, water sources, and supply routes. He organized logistical systems from the Nile Delta to Syria, maintained high morale in the army through discipline and rewards, and strengthened communication with the public to ensure resistance in cities under threat of invasion. These preparations reflected the most concrete application of the strategic patience and intellectual discipline Saladin had developed since youth. Every move aimed at long-term regional dominance rather than short-term victory. The Crusader army gathered a massive force to defend Jerusalem. This army, commanded by King Guy de Lusignan, moved to confront Saladin's forces around the Sea of Galilee. But Baldwin's death and internal struggles within the Kingdom of Jerusalem complicated Crusader plans. Saladin predicted the enemy's movements in advance. He positioned himself to control siege routes and supply lines. He held continuous consultations with his commanders and developed tactics advantageous in terms of both topography and climate. Control of water sources, the exhaustion of the Crusader army, and the enemy's morale were critical in his strategic planning. The Battle of Hattin, which took place on July 4, 1187, was the pinnacle of Saladin's military genius. The Crusader army, under scorching summer heat and severe thirst, was drawn into Saladin's envelopment strategy. Saladin deployed his army in ideal positions, trapping the Crusaders between two forces. He restricted their movement through encirclement and obstacles while applying strategic pressure with surrounding units. This tactic disrupted enemy morale, weakened discipline, and ultimately led to the complete disintegration of the Crusader army. During the battle, Saladin did not make sudden decisions but followed his long-prepared strategic plan. Elements such as maintaining high morale among his soldiers, managing the wounded and prisoners humanely, and quickly establishing order after the victory elevated his leadership to its peak. Following the victory at Hattin, the road to Jerusalem was open. In the autumn of 1187, Saladin marched toward Jerusalem. During this process, he preferred negotiations and diplomacy instead of brutal siege. The successors of Baldwin and the city's administration could not resist Saladin's fair and humane approach. Upon entering the city, he prioritized the safety of the population and the protection of holy sites. This attitude led to the perception of Saladin not only as a conquering leader but also as a ruler with moral and intellectual integrity. The conquest of Jerusalem was not only a strategic victory over the Crusaders, it also became a symbol of Islamic unity in the Middle East. Saladin's strategic patience, diplomatic knowledge, and leadership capacity, which he had developed from youth, reached historical maturity at this point. The Battle of Hattin and the conquest of Jerusalem in 1187 are considered the peak of Saladin's career. He had now become not only the central power against the Crusaders but also a unifying figure throughout the Middle East. Military success, he defeated the strongest Crusader armies and achieved strategic superiority. Diplomacy and public administration, he established order and security in conquered cities, forming cooperation with the local population. Regional dominance, he firmly consolidated the foundations of the Ayyubid state and established central authority across the Syria-Egypt axis. This process marked the pinnacle of Saladin's character and leadership philosophy. He shaped Middle Eastern history through the principles of patience, strategic intelligence, intellectual discipline, and moral responsibility. The conquest of Jerusalem by Saladin in 1187 was not only a military victory but also the beginning of a complex administrative and diplomatic process. Ensuring the security and order of the population in the conquered cities was among his top priorities. Saladin adopted a fair administrative understanding in the cities. He implemented balanced and just tax policies. He introduced reforms to revive the economic and social life of the population after the occupation. At the same time, he ensured the protection of holy sites and displayed a tolerant approach toward different religious groups. This policy strengthened his influence in both Egypt and Syria and gave him an advantage in diplomatic relations with the Crusaders. After taking Jerusalem, Saladin highlighted his diplomatic intelligence in relations with the Crusaders. Instead of direct war, he preferred to secure superiority through strategic negotiations and border arrangements. To break potential resistance in Jerusalem and its surroundings, he established fair administration in the cities and gained public support. He conducted prisoner exchanges, temporary truces, and diplomatic negotiations with Crusader leaders to limit conflicts. He established regular garrisons in border regions to prevent sudden Crusader attacks and reinforce strategic control in the region. During this period, the patience and long-term planning ability Saladin had developed since youth came to the forefront. Every move aimed at regional stability and forming a united Islamic front rather than short-term gains. One of the most insidious and challenging threats Saladin faced after the conquest of Jerusalem came from the Nizari Ismailis, commonly known as the Assassins. This order, organized in the rugged mountainous regions of Syria and in the Alamat-centered fortresses of Iran, maintained its existence not through open warfare but through covert operations, targeted assassinations, and psychological pressure. The assassins did not fight like a classical army. They aimed to change political outcomes by killing targeted leaders in public, outside mosques, during meetings, or in their tents before battle. Because of these methods, not only Seljuk sultans but also many emirs, commanders, and religious authorities remembered them with fear. In addition, the order's famous fidais were individuals who risked death, could hide for years in enemy lands, and skillfully disguised themselves within crowds. Throughout the 12th century, the assassins have become a shadow actor that weakened governmental order in the Middle East. Their attacks made it difficult for statesmen to perform their duties, prevented military leaders from moving securely, created constant panic and insecurity among the people, and placed political decision-makers under threat. Saladin was at the top of the assassins' target list. Not only because he had conquered Jerusalem or risen in power in the Islamic world, but also because his control over Syria and his attempts to seize the assassins' sources of income had provoked the order against him. There were 2 assassination attempts on Saladin's life. In the first attack, fidais disguised themselves and infiltrated a palace during a meeting with a local principality, reaching close to Saladin. In the second attempt, during preparations for war, they infiltrated his tent and came very close to killing him in his sleep. Saladin's struggle, war, diplomacy, and deterrence. Saladin knew that force alone would not be enough to confront the assassins. Therefore, he besieged important assassin fortresses in Syria, formed alliances with tribes and local powers in some regions to reduce assassin influence, assigned specially trained guards and intelligence officers to protect against assassinations, and in certain situations, resorted to compulsory diplomacy with assassin leaders. Decades of campaigns, intense battles, constant movement, and the burden of state affairs severely deteriorated Saladin's health. In 1192 to 1193, physical exhaustion, and likely long-term infection steadily drained his strength. Throughout the 12th century, the assassins have become a shadow actor that weakened governmental order in the Middle East. Their attacks made it difficult for statesmen to perform their duties, prevented military leaders from moving securely, created constant panic and insecurity among the people, and placed political decision-makers under threat. Saladin was at the top of the assassins' target list. Not only because he had conquered Jerusalem or risen in power in the Islamic world, but also because his control over Syria and his attempts to seize the assassins' sources of income had provoked the order against him. There were 2 assassination attempts on Saladin's life. In the first attack, fidais disguised themselves and infiltrated a palace during a meeting with a local principality, reaching close to Saladin. In the second attempt, during preparations for war, they infiltrated his tent and came very close to killing him in his sleep. Saladin's struggle, war, diplomacy, and deterrence. Saladin knew that force alone would not be enough to confront the assassins. Therefore, he besieged important assassin fortresses in Syria, formed alliances with tribes and local powers in some regions to reduce assassin influence, assigned specially trained guards and intelligence officers to protect against assassinations, and in certain situations, resorted to compulsory diplomacy with assassin leaders. Decades of campaigns, intense battles, constant movement, and the burden of state affairs severely deteriorated Saladin's health. In 1192 to 1193, physical exhaustion, and likely long-term infection steadily drained his strength. His final months in his palace in Cairo were a period requiring both physical and mental endurance. Despite his severe illness, Saladin displayed extraordinary discipline to avoid disrupting state affairs. As his illness progressed, his advisors and close commanders understood that his death would not only be a physical loss but also an event that would change the balance of power in the Middle East. His charisma, disciplined leadership, and strategic vision had an influence not only on armies but also on the public and bureaucracy. In 1193, after a severe illness in Cairo, Saladin passed away. His death created a brief wave of panic and profound sorrow. Administration in the Ayyubid state, it was divided among his sons and trusted commanders. However, none could fully sustain Saladin's personal authority and charisma. Effect on the people and the army, discipline and morale in the army were shaken temporarily. In the cities, the people felt the loss of his sense of justice and order. Regional balance of power, the Crusaders and neighboring principalities were forced to reassess the political situation in the Middle East following Saladin's death. The systematic discipline, long-term planning, and strategic intelligence Saladin maintained until his death revealed that he was not only a warrior but also a statesman, diplomat, and moral leader who left a unique legacy in Middle Eastern history. His death marked the end of an era in Middle Eastern history. However, his vision and strategic genius continued to inspire subsequent generations. Saladin Ayyubi's historical legacy stands out not only through his military victories but also through his virtuous and just governance. Despite being of Kurdish origin, he rose as a unifying leader in the Islamic world, and nearly all contemporary rulers took inspiration from his strategic, diplomatic, and just approach. Many wished to inherit his banner and continue the principles of governance he left behind. Saladin protected the rights of Jewish, Christian, and Muslim populations in the lands he conquered, safeguarded holy sites, and implemented fair policies in taxation and security. During his era, people of different religions were able to live in an atmosphere of tolerance and safety. This demonstrates how effective his leadership was not only militarily but morally and socially as well. Thus, Saladin went down in history not only as the one who closed a chapter in Middle Eastern history but also as a figure who would be an example for generations through his justice, generosity, virtue, and unifying leadership.